Yo, what's up, everyone? In this episode, I got the amazing opportunity to chat with a great friend of mine, Abi Scott, a senior enlisted leader in the United States Air Force and author of numerous articles on the Llama-Leadership page. During our discussion, we talked on the importance of effective followership, the role of failure in innovation and problem solving, and much, much more. We did have some minor technical difficulties during this episode, but we promise that the value of the discussion is absolutely worth the listen. Enjoy.
Life, learning, leadership, the Llama Lounge.
Yo, welcome back to the Llama Lounge, a dialogue on life, learning, and leadership. I'm Joe Bogdan. I'm honored and excited to have a great friend of mine as a guest on the podcast, Abi Scott, a senior enlisted leader in the United States Air Force that has led numerous professional organizations at the national level and currently oversees 180 people composed of both U.S. military and civilian personnel at Joint Base Pearl Harbor, Hickam, Hawaii. What's up, brother? How you doing?
What's going on, man? Long time no see.
I know, right? Bro, yeah. I was like, earlier, I was thinking about it. I was like, man, we've known each other pretty much our entire career. We grew up in the Air Force together, and it's just wild.
Literally. Yeah.
Man.
It's funny, man, because we were at Robbins and Combat Com, and then Combat Com again in Korea, and then Camp Zama, the oasis that Zama is for a little bit of time. So yeah, man, our first 3 assignments together, man. It's been a while.
Yeah, so that was wild because I remember this one vividly. I remember we were both, after we were both in Combat Com, we both ended up in Korea. And I was actually at Osan, you were at the hump, and I was outside the bus station. Yeah. And then we both looked at each other and was like, wait.
What are you doing here?
Yeah. And they're like, hey, where are you going next? We're like, oh, I'm going to this place that nobody heard of. I was like, where are you going? Camp Zama. I was like, so am I. I was like, what?
Yep.
Yeah. That was nuts, man. It was good times. But
funny how it works.
One thing I've always appreciated about you is you're super analytical, but you're super real about things. So, and what I mean by that is like, there's a couple people that I look at, and you, Herman Brown, a couple other folks that I look at, and when y'all like look at something, you don't take it at face value, right? Like it's so easy to do that nowadays. And that's one thing that I've always thought about Abi Scott was, if there's a thing that's out there, just because it's the most popular thing to believe in, it don't mean that it's the right thing. And then you're going to look at it. And I always thought that was a great characteristic that you have.
I appreciate it, man. I mean, I can't lie. That's probably gotten me in trouble, you know what I mean, a couple of times as well, too. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, as it does.
Yeah, it's tough, you know, but I appreciate that, man. I that's something that I actually will say that I probably try and do with everything, right, is just kind of look at it for what it is, right? I have probably realized more so over the last few years of my career that not a lot of people are able to do that. So I take it as a blessing, man. And that's probably something I took for granted for quite some time, being able to see things multifaceted, if you will, right, from different approaches and different perspectives. So, man, I'm pretty glad you noticed. I appreciate that.
Yeah, man. If there's anything I kind of can at least, if I don't have many talents, but the one I have is probably like being able to identify good people, and you're one of them. So thanks for being you.
I'll take it. I appreciate that. Man, I appreciate it.
So, hey, I wanted to give this opportunity because, you know, I always say this, man, every airman has a story. You know, we're regurgitating that same saying, but it's true. You know, every airman does have a story. And until you ask that story, a lot of us are inherently humble and we don't need to share it all the time. But I think for our listeners, it'd be great if we could hear a little bit about you and how you got to be who you are today, a little bit about your history and maybe some of your trials and tribulations like most of us have, you know, and you kind of alluded to it probably a couple times that might have got you in trouble a little bit, some of your greatest characteristics, which is very, very common. But I'd love to hear a little bit about you.
Yeah, man. So, you know, I grew up in Dallas, right? I was born in South Carolina, grew up in Dallas. You know, what's funny is my parents are preachers. They're ministers. And so I grew up in Dallas, did my whole schooling, right, in Dallas, except my senior year. And so they moved us back to South Carolina, to a small town, Beaufort, South Carolina. It's actually where Parris Island, where the Marines do their basic training. And so they moved us back there right before, 2 weeks before my senior year. And so being faith-based people, it was the Lord telling them, hey, listen, it's time to go back home. And so for me, what was crazy is that I just went. I didn't question it, man. I mean, I was like, yeah, well, I know this is literally all I've known my entire life, but time to go. You know, my mom, she's definitely somebody that's really important to me. I use a lot of her one-liners all the time. She's got a million of them, but for me, I take things from her all the time, and I lean on her for really kind of making me who I am, kind of as a man, if you will. And not to say that my father, wasn't a part of that. But I remember, when I was 14 years old, so my mom had a resume writing desktop publishing business. Now, again, we're talking about 1994, right? Where people actually had to go somewhere and get their resumes made, right? And that summer, she had to go out of town, and for about a month. And so she was like, "Hey, I don't." So I'm, oh, all right, sure. So I went in, had my little suit and tie, and I ran the business for a month. I mean, I literally, as a 14-year-old, was writing resumes, right, doing desktop publishing for adults to get them jobs, right, as a 14-year-old. So just imagine, their shock and surprise as they call and walk in, and it's this 14-year-old me writing their resume. But we did, man. We got some folks some jobs, man. So it was. I say that to say that, she started me off young, right, understanding the importance of professionalism, right? And really just owning what it is. Of course, when you walk in the room and people see a 14-year-old, they're out, right? But at the end of the day, most of them stayed and got, what they paid for. And that was because of the way that I corresponded with them afterwards. I didn't become a 14-year-old, after our interaction. I've kind of taken that mentality with me, throughout the rest of my life. And so, I kind of joined the Air Force by accident, really. I was working, going to school full time, and was probably partying a little more than I had planned on, and got put on academic probation, right? And so I was like, let me try something different, and I literally stumbled upon the Air Force office, and so I took the ASVAB, killed it, and next thing I know, 3 months later, I'm in the Air Force, and so I kind of happened really quick. Joy, man, it's been a blessing. I've been stationed all around the world, mostly in the Pacific. I was in Japan for 7 years. You were part, I think, about 3 or 4 years of that. But I'll be the first to tell you, I wasn't always all in. I did not join, for a lot of the same reasons that everybody else did. I joined, like I said, kind of by accident. I just wanted to see where the journey would take me. And it really took for a great chief, Chief Neely. He was actually the comm squadron chief. He was our chief, right, for a while. Mm-hmm. And he really kind of took me under his wing when I was a staff sergeant, because I was hell-bent on getting out. But I didn't have a plan. And he really kind of pulled me to the side and kind of, if you want to call it re-blued, right, really re-blued me and got me back into the fold. And I tell you, it was one of the best decisions that I made, for sure. But since then, man, it's just been a journey of life lessons, right? Trying to figure out how to make it happen in a dual military world. My wife, a lot of people, but my wife is in the Army, so she just got picked up for Sergeant Major. So it's that in itself is a struggle, right? Trying to just maintain in an environment like that. So, but yeah, that's me.
So would you say it was when, because even after Chief Neely might have, helped you out and got you to commit a little bit longer, would you say that's when you were fully committed, or do you feel like it was somewhere down the road, or how would you describe that?
Yeah, so it's funny you say that, because what he did was he planted a seed. It was really one of the first times that somebody had really invested in me. And somebody that's Airman, right, that I value. And of course, as a staff sergeant, right, a chief, a squadron chief, and we were a GSU, right, geographically separated unit. And so for him to invest in me, that meant something. And so what I didn't want to do was really disappoint him. And so I would say that was the seed that was planted. And then when I PCS from there to Korea, another seed was planted by actually a civilian who was my supervisor at the time, who really kind of, again, invested in me from an ownership standpoint, right? I was doing project management and we were on OSAN. I had, an insane amount of projects. I was a project manager over the second runway, building a new air traffic control tower, building a new radar, new RAPCON, elementary school. And he was just giving them to me like, I trust you, make it happen, right? And so it really, I found something in me that was like, yeah, this is what I want to do. And it just was cultivated, from there by other folks just kind of investing right in me as a person, to the point to where, yeah, I absolutely was all in, but definitely Chief Neely planted that first seed.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome, man. And I say, like, we hear these stories, and almost always you can kind of, any success story, you can kind of take it back and be like, hey, there was people that helped along the way, because we all need that help, whether we know it or not, right? We need some guidance and help, and then unfortunately some people just focus on the negative people in their lives, but there's a lot, if you look real hard, man, there's some great people out there that can help you and have helped us along the way, right? Yeah. I do have a funny story about the outside runway one of these days, but probably not for this podcast. We have to talk about, because I went back to Korea.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I went back to Korea back in end of 2015, and that runway, yeah, it was good times.
yeah.
That
wasn't my fault.
So, yeah. We won't tag you there. I have an idea. I know whose fault it was. So it doesn't.
Sure, yeah.
But man, so you're that young. You're doing resumes, right? So. And you're gaining a lot of skills. And I always say, man, it's like there's a Mr. Miyagi thing going on. When you got to do a wax on, wax off, and you're painting the fence, what are you learning, right? You're learning all these different things. And part of it was probably attention to detail, some discipline, but then some writing skills, which we clearly have seen, because you basically become part of the Llama family, right? Because you've written great articles for our site. And one that hasn't even been released yet, but I thought we could do a little prelude to that one. But the one that we released just this week of this recording, I will probably release this a little bit down the road, but just this week of this recording, it's gotten some traction. This one's definitely got some traction, and it's titled "Leadership is Overrated."
Yeah.
Tell us, like, let's unpack that a little bit. Like, what was the inspiration behind you writing that?
Yeah, man. So, leadership is overrated. It isn't to mean that, leadership isn't important. In fact, it's the exact opposite. I think leadership is kind of the pinnacle, right, of what a person can do in any given situation, right? So let's take rank, position. Let's throw all that stuff away, right? Let's just start at a clean slate with just person, right? Mm-hmm. When you talk about what makes a person a leader, well, the basic definition that people will willingly follow, period, right? But the willingly is very important here. and what I say by leadership is overrated is we make an assumption that everybody can do that, right? Everyone can be a leader. And I don't believe so. I think that you could put anyone in a leadership position, right? You could say that there are leadership traits that people have, but everybody can't be the leader, right? In any given, right? And we're trying to go and dig a ditch somewhere, somebody's going to step up and be the leader. And the other 9 people are going to be the followers. And we're not going to vote on it, right? We're not going to say, hey, by show of hands, someone's just going to step up. It's going to happen organically. And everyone else is going to follow. It happens all the time, right? That's true leadership, right? And we're going to follow them because maybe they're the most knowledgeable, or, they step up and have a great game plan, or whatever it may be, right? But they're going to demonstrate leadership traits and skills, and we're going to say, hey, that's the person we want to follow. So when I say leadership is overrated, what I'm saying is that there's an overemphasis, in my opinion, on being an effective leader. We just got to give you the tools, right? Read this book, do this thing, watch this podcast, right? Mm-hmm. And you're going to be a great leader. And I don't think that's true. But what I do think that everyone can do is be a great follower, right? That doesn't actually take the same organic level of emphasis, right, and talent that leadership does, right? In any given situation, again, if you prescribe to my notion, there's going to be one leader, right? Well, everyone else is a follower. So if everyone else is following, well, then maybe we should focus a little more on followership. So what the article was really about was that it was about followership, right? The leadership is overrated. Yeah, it's just to say that, in our society, it's where we put our emphasis. And again, that's not to say that leadership is not important. And I think that sometimes people can see leadership as overrated and think that I mean that leadership is not important. And it's the opposite. Leadership is the most important. It's so important. Not everyone can do it.
Yeah. Yeah, man, there's a lot to unpack there. That's some pretty good stuff, because I think, you talk about everybody could be a great follower, but so many are not good at it. Right. So, I mean,
yeah.
And it's possible that part of the reason why is because we fed them with the notion that they can be the best leader the whole time.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's an interesting discussion. And in that article, man, I remember you brought up a touchy subject and this is where I go back to Abbie is willing to look at something for what it is, right? You brought up the whole the Navy commander thing, right? You brought and you brought that up, right? And it's funny because I was like, everybody I saw, and I'm the dude who likes to I don't have to react to everything. I just want to kind of see what's going on, right? And that's the way I've always been. I like to see what's going on because I want to get everybody's perspective from it. But like I would say 99% of my social media feed was like, yeah, he did the right thing. He did the right thing, right?
Yeah,
and then you're sitting there, you're wondering like, okay, but there's a lot we don't know, right? Behind the scenes of what actually happened. Absolutely. But you had a great perspective on the follower-ship piece. Would you mind like chatting on that a little bit?
Yeah, so and let me preface this by saying I don't know everything, that occurred either, right? I don't have any inside information here, right? But what my perspective was that everyone looked at that situation from what I saw, same, which is he demonstrated great leadership, right? He took care of his people. He was doing what was right. He spoke up, and by all means, he demonstrated what we expect of all leaders. Okay, and you know what? I'm not even disagreeing with that. That's fine. That's fair. What I am saying is, but he also didn't demonstrate proper followership. Because the reason, from what I know, from what has been released publicly, right, that he was relieved wasn't because he failed as a leader. He failed as a follower, right? He failed to execute things in the proper way that we communicate in the military, utilizing your chain of command. That's like day one. Like literally when you arrive at basic training, we talk about chain of command, right? And he failed to properly utilize that. So in essence, as a commander is leadership. It's not relegated to commanders only, but a person in a position of leadership, you are put in that position because we expect there to be a certain level of calm, steadiness, right? Leadership ability to be able to weather the storm, right? And when things don't go your way, we still expect you to follow the leadership of those above you. As simple as that. And from what I understand, that's why he was relieved. He didn't execute proper followership. So for those below him, he could have been the greatest commander in the world. I'm not arguing that. But what I'm saying is that from a follower perspective, he looked only through his leadership lens and did not act, from my perspective, as an effective follower, right? Because I've never been at war, right? I've never had to make a call from that standpoint. But I would imagine that as a commander of a war vessel, there may be a situation where we need you to execute faithfully in a wartime situation. And if you can't communicate effectively in this type of situation, how can I trust you in the next, right? And again, this is my perspective. I don't have any inside information, but that's absolutely how I viewed it. As soon as I saw I led strictly for, yeah, got it. Hey, great leader. But you failed to me as a follower.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people don't look at the long. So when we look at those instances that occur, we typically look at it only in the now and the present and maybe some of the past. Right. But we don't look at it enough and, okay, so if this is okay, what if everybody starts thinking that's okay? And what
Right.
if we continue to do this, right? And how does that, you know, how does that cause disruption in good order and discipline moving forward
Correct.
as an entire force? So, and I'm not saying that, like, just like you're saying, we're looking at it from a different perspective. We're not saying that the man wasn't a good leader, right? We're not saying he
Right.
wasn't a great leader. He may well be, and maybe he even made the right decision at that moment because we weren't there,
Sure.
right? We have no
Yep.
idea. What we're just trying to say is maybe there's a different perspective we should also look at this from.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I thought that was cool. So, hey, I wanted to ask you though, did you get any blowback from that article at all?
So I didn't get any blowback,
Uh,
but I did have a couple people say, well, do you know something we don't know? And I said, no, this is just my opinion. I'm not speaking in any official capacity, right? But my limited knowledge of how a fleet works, right? I do know a lot of times that the admiral is on the same vessel as the admiral of the fleet is on the same vessel as that particular captain. You know what I mean? And so I can imagine how it was circumvented and how it was viewed. But yeah, no, I didn't get any real blowback. Not yet.
yeah. 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 Still early. It's just been out for a little bit, but, but yeah. I'll let you know if I get any blowback from the comments, but, so far it's been all good. Yeah. But and that's what it is about the Llama Lounge. We wanted to do on the Llama Leadership page was put out what people think. It's their op-eds, right? And I know Abbie, you can appreciate this. We really took it from the whole perspective of the Players Tribune. We were like, hey, by players for players. We have plenty of opportunity to read plenty of leadership perspectives from the same people that write books. We wanted to hear from people out there doing it and just, raw items. Like, this is what we're actually doing. We're not in a school right now, right? We're actually out here and this is what we kind of see. So we really appreciate you contributing to it.
Yeah, no, I appreciate y'all for creating this, man. It's been awesome. I love reading them.
Yeah, man. So we go from followership to another F word, right? So we had an article that you wrote a little while back, and you said it was my favorite F word, and you were talking about failure. So what were can you let's explore what was your motivation to go with that article and what you talked about in that one?
So it's funny that we talked about him earlier, Chief Neely, which was faith, family, finance, and fitness. And over time, I developed my fifth F, which was failure. And for me, I tell you, we look at failure, I think, most times as a negative. I look at it as an opportunity. I have done some of my best growing in failure. I've done some of my best learning in failure. Failure, I tell you, sometimes will show people's true colors. We like to use the word resilience and adversity. Well, those things don't exist if there isn't some type of failure. Right. And so for me, I will tell you, I embrace it. I embrace failure. Now, there is a way to fail and fail. Right? They cannot fail on. I'm tracking that. I'm not trying to say reward failure. But what I was illustrating in that article was we should be failing by trying to break through the barriers and break through the norms that aren't going to get us to where we need to be. Right. We need to be innovative in the way that we think, innovative in the way that we do things. We need to be strategic thinkers, and we need to be so absurdly far reaching, right, in the way that we try to do things that we're going to fail. Right. If you do things you never fail, what are you really doing? Well, I mean, we could have done those things already, right? How many times did they fail with the atomic bomb before they got it right? Right? You got to fail. So for me, it's my favorite F word because it's something that, again, we don't emphasize on enough. I will have airmen that won't try because they don't want to fail. Well, just like Ray Allen, and Kobe have both said, hey, listen, you're going to miss every shot you don't take. Right? So if you're not trying hard, I don't want you on my team. I'm going to be honest with you. I want the person that's going to take that next shot, even though you missed your last 10. That's the kind of drive and motivation, determination that we need right within our ranks, honestly.
Yeah, and then I've had this discussion with many people, and I'm on the same page with you. When you go into items, and I remember actually Ian Eishin, command chief down in Edwards, he
Hmm.
was on an episode of this, and he was talking about, like, that's how we have entrepreneur airmen, the one that are willing to
Right.
go into something knowing they're probably going to fail 20 times, but it's going to take those 20 failures that you learn from before you come up with the final solution, right? Or maybe
Absolutely.
100, maybe 1,000, right? It might be all those.
Right.
And the issues that I have with it is when we bring this up, there are some people, and I think we talked about a little while ago about how some people want to insert a word in there that's not in there, or change the meaning of a word around. And they look
Right.
at it like,
Right.
well, I don't think we should be promoting people making mistakes on purpose. And I was like, okay, mistakes and failures are different. Right. Those are two
Right.
very different things. Mistakes are
Right.
okay too. Right. And I had a
Right.
commander one time say it the best way. He said, hey, we want you to be able to make mistakes and learn from them too. But make sure they're commensurate with where you're at. Don't be no senior non-commissioned officer making a bunch of airman mistakes, right? They should at least be senior
Exactly.
non-commissioned officer mistakes, right? And I thought
Absolutely.
that really resonated with me. But failure is still different than mistakes, right? We still,
Correct.
if you're afraid to fail, you'll never stretch the boundaries, just like you said, and come up with solutions. If we're not willing to fail, we will never come up with
Uh,
a cure to what we're going on right now, right? A vaccine for what we're doing right now. How many times have we already failed trying to
Absolutely.
figure that out? But
Right.
if they're like, oh,
Man,
we're just going to stop.
and I'm gonna tell you, man, that's where we mess up with talent management, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is because we're afraid that it's not gonna work. We all right now, right, have a guy that's the best suited for position A,
Mm-hmm.
but we can't because of dot dot dot. We make up 50 different reasons why we can't put that person
Mm-hmm.
in that. Oh, well, this is a flight chief position, and they're just a
Right.
blah blah blah. Oh, listen, let me tell you something. If the our mission is hanging on one person,
Yeah.
we have already failed, right?
Right.
So to me, I look at talent management in that same vein, man. I absolutely will stretch the boundaries of what we can and can't do with our person. Let's put this person over here. Yeah, yeah, that's the right move. I know that they're a master sergeant and they should be dot dot dot, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny, man. That just reminded me of all kinds of stuff, because you're right with the talent management thing. And one thing, it was interesting. I was at chief leadership course, and we were having, it's a lot of times the conversations in between the lessons were the best ones, right? So as they
Oh, I can
always are,
imagine.
right? Like, yeah.
Right,
So
right.
and now you got a bunch of chiefs in there, and we were talking about cyber warfare and whether or not we need to have every single one of those airmen looking good in uniform, passing RPT tests, and doing all this stuff, right? So it became a big
Right.
debate. You get a bunch of chiefs in there, and they have very solid opinions on things. So I was going back
Yeah,
and
yeah.
forth, and one of my buddies, Kendrick Hinton, man, shout out to Kendrick. He was like, I don't care if the dude passed the PT test. I want to win. so so
Right.
he was like, if this dude could be drinking his Mountain Dew and smashing on cyber terrorists, it was like, then drink on, brother. And it was just like an interesting view. And we do, like you said, we make reasons. Now, I'm not saying that there's no value, because we do want people to be healthy, right? I mean, but there's
Sure.
definitely
Yeah.
some pieces there where we should at least not limit our thoughts on, whether it's talent management or whatever else it might be.
Yeah, we hit the easy button. It's what we
Mhm.
do. We hit the easy button all the time, right? Well, this is the way we've done it, and it's worked. Oh, okay, but that's the way we've done it for 40 years. Like, you're saying there's
Mhm.
no better way to do this,
Mhm.
right? We don't want to challenge the norms at all. So yeah, man. I mean, I've got into it with some pretty high ranking folks, right? Because I'm just not gonna do that, like, at all. Well, that, I mean, I don't know, So it's tough, man, because not enough people, in my opinion, think outside the box. But I say, it's funny because I had a buddy of mine, Jay Hall. Shout out to Jay Hall. He told me something that really has resonated with me for the last year and a half. He was like, don't put yourself in a box that's not there, right?
Mhm.
And I was like, oh, I like that. And we do it all the time. We create these faux barriers, right, of why
Mhm.
we can't. No, we absolutely can do this. Like, no, there's nothing that says we can't do that. There's a better way to do this. I'm challenging norms right now, in the way that we train. because we've been training the same way for the last at least 20 years since I've been in. Since I was an airman. And I challenge that norm all the time. Says, hey, it doesn't make sense to me. Let's do something different. But it's uncomfortable for people, right? So yeah, man, I'm right along there with you.
Yeah, even like menial tasks. It's interesting because so I was a flight chief of about 400 folks, and in CE we often have like 400 or 500 folks. So just as a flight chief, I had 400 folks in Spangdahlem, and so
Right.
I needed to not have a full CSS, but I needed a flight program manager to help manage some of the admin
Yeah.
stuff coming through. And one of the things that typically senior NCOs are going to be responsible for are going to be like manning documents and updating the UMPR. And I know for our civilian audience, basically just our rosters where everybody is, right? So, and typically a
Right.
senior non-commissioned officer is doing it. And by the way, plenty of senior non-commissioned officers have never been trained and they have no idea what they're doing either. We're trying to fix
Oh,
that.
I'm well
But,
aware.
right, right. So I bring up a young tech sergeant, and then after him a staff sergeant into these rotating roles, and I just teach him how to do it. And I remember
Right.
my CEM called and was like, hey, who's issuing position numbers out? And I was like, oh, the program manager. And I told him his name, the name, the staff sergeant. He was like, you got a staff sergeant doing that? I was like, yeah. I was like, you have a lot of faith in the staff sergeant to make sure this gets right. And I was like, well, it's not like I didn't teach him how to do it before, we did
Right.
it. So,
Yeah.
and he was just like, like miraculously surprised because it was efficient. It was effective. The dude was knocking it out. And then what else was he
Right.
learning as a staff sergeant, right? He's
Right.
going to know this forever.
Right.
Yeah. So,
Right.
those are just ways we could kind of think outside the box. It does not require a senior non-commissioned officer to do that job.
Right. And guess who's doing that in a CSS? A staff sergeant. You know what I mean?
Right,
So,
right.
yeah, I mean, if you go to MPF, it's a staff sergeant there. But you're right. We put ourselves in boxes that aren't there, man. We create limits for no reason. And I'm gonna tell you, I try to knock them all down, one by one, man. Because we've got to evolve, as a force. We do. There's a lot of, we can't do anything today, right, about our our technology, right? That's going to take time. We'll get there, but we can do something about the way we think and approach problems. That's for sure. I love the things that we've kind of created. The AFWorks, right? I love that. The Spark tanks. Those things are awesome because it really just establishes a culture of strategic thinking, right? Of thinking outside of the box. And when you look at some of the submissions that people put to those, you're like, what? Wait. Why haven't we been doing that? Wait, we just now are doing it. It's amazing, man.
I mean, you're right, man. Sometimes it takes some radical ideas. We just had these Brazilian jiu-jitsu black belts on the show, and we were relating a lot of the things that they were, that they do in BJJ. How does that relate to, dealing with things, like maybe even leadership things and responding to things and problem solving. And I was thinking, man, we need to get our senior non-commissioned officers and have this dude put them, like, start on top, right? They're the
Sure.
experts on top. And now you got to figure out how to not freak out and get out of this position, right? I mean, like, because that's when because it doesn't matter if you're in conflict or you're in any type of like just chaotic moment. If you start freaking out, you're not going to be able to solve that problem whatsoever. But if you're, if you got somebody on top of you and you're learning in this moment where, okay, this dude sit on top of you, he has your arm, and we can kind of start coaching you on how to calm yourself down and then move your elbow and do the right things to get them off of you. That's going to translate to, to what we do, right? And it could be just an admin task, but it's going to translate to not freaking out and kind of keeping yourself calm and making the right decisions, try to solve a problem. And I was just thinking about that. Like, those are things that we could think of that might relate. And by the way, I've had many ideas that have completely failed and blown, they've gone totally left. And I'm like, I've even, put somebody in a position where I thought they could take it and they just had some issues, but I was watching them. I was like, all right, not ready yet. Right. We'll reel it back a little bit. We're going to reel it back a little bit, but you'll never know. Right. You'll never know. And the other thing that I think is an issue, and I think you could probably have some thoughts on it, is unfortunately, we reward the behavior of staying in the box sometimes.
Oh yeah.
We reward, like, hey, playing it safe.
Right. Yeah. we not only reward it, it's almost the requirement. It's almost the expectation, right?
Right.
So much so that when someone does step out, it's profound, right? I mean,
Mhm.
man, there's times where I have conversations with people and they'll bring up something simple. I mean, the most simple thing, and I'm like, so just do it. They're like, oh, really? And I'm like, wait, why are we even doing that now anyway? Because we don't think like that, right? Oh, you
Mhm.
mean I can just go ahead and do this thing? Yeah, absolutely. Please go do it. We haven't trained ourselves. We are absolutely inside the box, reactive based people, right? Entity. Our culture is that way. Um, I think again, I do think it's getting better,
It
but we're not quite there yet. Yeah, I like the Brazilian jiu-jitsu analogy, man. That's good. I think it's something that really encourages critical thinking, right?
Mhm.
Because one of the things that's unique about Brazilian jiu-jitsu is that, yeah, you could be, black belt, brown belt, whatever, but you can still get submitted, right? There's a
Right,
million different
right,
ways to submit a dude, right?
right.
Um, but one of the things that you said, I've had a million bad ideas, right? Dude,
Mhm.
I don't know that they're bad until I implement them, right?
Mhm.
I think all my ideas are great. You just got
Right,
to
yeah.
implement it and realize that was terrible. What was I thinking?
Yeah.
But that's okay,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I mean, if you implemented an idea that you knew sucked, man, you need to go anyway,
Yeah,
right?
exactly, exactly.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
like, what were you thinking? It was like, I thought it was a good idea, man. Like, what?
yeah. I
Why else
thought
would I have tried it?
exactly, exactly. Now,
That's you know,
oh man, you're right. I do, man. I admit I have to slow myself down. But all right, let me think through this. Let me make sure this is actually something that I can execute, not just a good idea, right? Because too many bad ideas, and yeah, now you're not credible anymore.
right. Yeah, and then the other thing too is when you're coming up with these ideas, coming up with ideas is easy. Coming up with ideas that are feasible, that aren't against some ridiculous law that nobody's tracking. You gotta
Yeah,
package your stuff right. You gotta be ready, right?
right.
You don't just start throwing out random ideas like I'm gonna try this. I think it'll work. It's like, yeah, we've possibly tried that before and someone died. That's why we don't do that, right? So you got to really kind of think through, do some critical thinking, do your research and all that before you're ready. You don't have to be 100% ready to execute, but you at least get to
Right.
about 80% before you decide to just try something, right? And
Sure.
something that I was told as good advice, man, when I was when I was a young senior NCO, still kind of coming up. One of my chiefs told me, "Hey, you want to make sure you know how you get fired? Surprise your boss. Don't let your boss be surprised. At least let them know what you're working on, right? Yeah, don't let your boss get surprised somewhere."
Right. No, I agree, man. I agree. Hey, man, I got a question for you, man.
Yeah.
Um, in com, we're a pretty big career field, but our units aren't huge like CE, right? You got five, six
Mhm.
hundred people in a CE unit. How do you effectively manage um, the level of investment in your people with a unit so large, right? Because listen,
Mm.
it's 125, 150, 180 people. That's doable. 500 people. How do you
Yeah.
invest in them? How do you choose who to invest in, right?
Yeah. So what I've done, and I've learned this a while back, is that you get that many people, you're not going to be able to invest all of them. I think I've heard it numerous times in different leadership articles, or if you're reading books, that after 150 people, you start losing a lot of the touch points with people, and even at 150, that's going to be still a bit of a struggle. But when you get to these large numbers, what I've done is focused on caring about everybody, but focused my development on that layer right below me. And I hate using the word below, but the people that I influence directly, which would be my senior NCOs. So I spent a lot of time uh, developing, coming up with radical ideas on, like, we had some instructors from Maxwell. We're going through this whole COVID thing, so we're able to get them on here, and we're able to have some conversations. on Zoom, and all these other platforms that we had. So I'm constantly wanting to pour into my senior non-commissioned officers, starting with my senior master sergeants, then my master sergeants, and the master selects. And I'm expecting, and I tell them I expect them to feed that down to the NCOs, and then down to, and the NCOs should be like developing those airmen instead of just skipping over the NCOs and going to those airmen. I think it's real important that we trickle that down. And the way I keep that care and development, care is, and the relationships with everybody is, I have multiple flights. Some people might have multiple elements or whatever it might be, however you might be broken down. I try to have a monthly time with each of them where I'll have, okay, I want one airman from every single element to come have coffee with me. Coffee's on me. And that's just their time with me, and they can ask me anything. And those conversations has gone from anything from just talking about sports the whole time to doctrine. I mean, I've had everything that come from left and right. Yeah. So I spend time doing that. Once I left the element, which my element was anywhere between 62 and 100 people, depending on where it was, I couldn't do just everybody come into this, let's get a giant room together and start doing some training and some development. So I've really had to focus it on the layer, because I say this, and the listeners will hear me say this probably multiple times, but my whole goal and purpose wearing this chief stripe is to develop world championship winning coaching trees. So I want people to be able to leave my organization and go win somewhere else. And we can all win. So there's possibilities there. We're not playing against each other. So that's just my goal. So I try to focus on them and the CGOs, of course, as well, and the civilian leaders at that same echelon.
Oh, that's good, man. That's a nugget right there. I tell you, that's and that's something that not everybody can do. And I appreciate that perspective, because one of things I'll tell you right now, I will get wrapped up in is, trying to take care of everybody, right? Trying to, because you don't want to neglect, you know what I mean, folks. And I absolutely approach as well, similar to you do. But, my follow-up question, will be is, how do you, or have you had a situation to where you felt like you needed to change a culture in an organization, and how'd you do that?
Man, yeah, that was actually the last two assignments, really. And some of it was deep culture. Some of it was just a culture of not knowing how to turn it on at the right time, right? I haven't had to really worry about too many toxic cultures. I've had to remove some people in different positions, or at least advise a commander to, but not too many of those full toxic environments. And that's probably because of the nature of my position. I do believe that leaders put that environment out there, right? They have the ability to influence an environment when it comes to toxicity. But what I would say, the multiple times I've had to change a culture, it didn't have to do with people didn't want to do it. They just didn't know necessarily how. And it was just a big mess. I've had people come to me and say, I've worked my butt off every day for like 12 hours a day, and I go home and I have no idea what I did all day. I mean, like, I feel like I didn't even move the needle at all. And I'm like, this is why. So I sit there and watch, and I create, our PME, people talk about it as like, oh, it's this, and they try to dodge PME and all this stuff, professional military education. And I'm like, no, if you learn and you actually try to apply 100-day strategic plan, right, with your team.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And you execute that. You see what the needs are, and you identify levers of change, because we cannot change everything, but you find like that one lever, and then that'll impact so many things. So I'll give you an example. My last installation, the guys were just like, they were late on everything. Right. And they were working late to try to make suspenses, whether it was evaluations, whether it was decorations, or just random suspenses. Everything was always late. And because it was always late, they were getting last minute taskers, and they were working throughout, and they had no breaks in between. Well, what does that do? That means now they're working on admin so much that they don't get time to lead their airmen. They don't get to do development. Right. They don't get to go spend time with their folks, get into the shop. So I noticed that was the lever. We had to change that. So we went real aggressive with our deadlines on everything. They're like, why we got to turn this in 60 days early? I was like, because if you do, I promise you that you're going to have more time back to go do what you want to do. And they didn't believe me right at the beginning, but as time went on, it started working out. And that's what I try to tell people is like, you got to identify what the lever of change is. And you can't do that just off the bat. You got to go in there and kind of watch what's happening.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. So those are some of the things. Because a lot of times, man, people, if you suck at managing stuff, you can create a toxic environment because you don't know how to manage everything. Everything's going haywire.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So people think, no, there's a toxic leader. It's like, no, he's just a crappy manager, man. He needs some management skills.
So, man, it's so funny. So kind of, man, this all just comes full circle, right? So the article that I wrote, about leadership is overrated. One of the things I didn't put in there, but I have talked about in conversation is the need for better managers.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I know that was the old 80s mindset where, management, right? But it's true. We need to teach better management skills, right? A lot of times we penalize leaders, quote unquote, right? When really it's not leadership that they're bad at. It's management they're bad at. They are terrible managers. They're motivational. They can develop airmen, right? They can get the best out of them. They can recognize they have good perspective, but they're horrible managers.
Right.
If poor right well, right? The things that we expect from managers. And I see that, man, more present together as our force starts to get younger. Right. As our leadership tiers start to get younger, what I'm noticing is everybody wants to put it on, they're terrible leaders. I disagree. I think they're terrible managers. I don't think we've invested that management, right, aspect enough. They're good enough from a leadership perspective, right? That's kind of what got them there. It's the management style that we've completely missed the mark.
I have a theory behind that too. And I think like our history together, knowing each other for so long, I think it kind of relates to it too. I have a theory that when we were growing up in the Air Force, we were put in positions where, I'll tell you what, Camp Zama, we were like on a pirate ship for a little bit. We had like one chief and a bunch of us NCOs trying to figure it out, right? So there was a lot of challenge there because we had to figure out how to manage a lot of stuff to make sure we didn't all get fired, right? So there was a lot of opportunities there. And at the time, we probably didn't realize that we were learning a lot of management skills. And I'll tell you, Camp Zama prepared me because my operational job wasn't taxing. It wasn't super hard. We weren't working ridiculous hours or nothing.
Right.
We had an important mission, but it wasn't an exhausting mission. So I took a lot of time learning about every single additional duty, right? Like every single one that we had. Right. And that prepared me for when I went to Travis on my first tour, and I ended up running a 22-person shop because the tech sergeant got removed, and I was a staff sergeant, 6 years time in service, and I'm running an entire work center, and I'm like, all right, let's go to work. And that management skills I gained from there, and then now they were tested at the next installation. So what I would say that adversity like really helped in the experience I had. But the other piece of it, my theory is, man, for a longest time, staff sergeants and tech sergeants were left with a tool bag at work. They weren't getting developed on that management piece. They weren't getting developed in a lot of things. And there was airmen come out of FTAC trying to be the next chief master on the Air Force already, or right away they're just trying to get BTZ because that's what they were told. And a bunch of senior NCOs that were either done or they were trying to get that next stripe. And there wasn't enough development down. And those staffs and techs, man, they got promoted. Now they're masters and seniors. You know what I mean? And they didn't get a lot of the development on the way up. And I think that's what we're kind of seeing a result of now. Yeah. Yeah.
No, just, man.
I kind of went off on diatribe there, but yeah, that's just feel like
no. It's good, man, because it's relevant. Like I said, to the article that I wrote, right? Because that's really what you just hit on. What I'm articulating in that article about leadership being quote unquote overrated, right? It's that, there was such an overemphasis on it. We left folks behind, right? And not left folks behind as in they're still there, but we left them there from a developmental piece, right? We stopped focusing so much on followership, on managerial skills, on true development, and put all our eggs into the leadership basket, right? And said, this
Yeah.
is what you need to be successful, right?
Yeah.
And so where you do, some of it paid off. We do have some leaders that are very good, very solid, came up in that culture. But we got, and I think you hit it right on the head. There's definitely an imbalance, right, on what the expectation was from our senior NCOs versus our airmen, and we kind of messed up in the middle, right?
Yeah, and we also at some point decided that the word management or being called a manager is the worst thing you could ever be called. We
Absolutely.
vilified the word, and that's where it kind of went awry. You got to be a good manager, at least an effective. You don't have to be the greatest manager ever, but if you can manage stuff, right? You got to manage your people, you got to manage resources and all that stuff, and then you got the leadership skills. That's when you start rising, right? And you start really growing, but you got to figure out that management piece early on, and grow into some of the other leadership opportunities you have. So I think we missed the boat, and I think we're trying to, sometimes I feel like we're overcorrecting the other way, but we got to, we still got some work to do. But all the stuff we kind of talked about, I feel like, whether it's being more innovative and everything else that we're talking about, I think we are getting better now. We're starting to see a lot of it. And granted, it might just be us thinking, man,
Yeah,
it might be the
absolutely.
old people sitting sitting on the porch now, but but I just feel
Right,
like
right.
there's a lot of great progress going on. But I think these open conversations that you and I are having are pivotal to, they're instrumental to finding that improvement, because we got to call it ugly sometimes before we can ever get to that next point.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. No, you're absolutely right. It starts here, man. It starts with these conversations, and I love it. I
Yeah,
wish we had
bro.
more of.
So, man, and I think we will, man. You're in the Llama family. You've written numerous articles for us. I mean, the other great power struggle is coming out soon. I just wanted to plug it for a moment, because there's some good stuff in that one too. People are gonna become Abi Scott fans, man. They're gonna be like, hey, man, all these articles are amazing, because you call it how it is, and you're not afraid of being different when you write your article. So thank you so much for that.
No, I appreciate you, man. Just for giving me this opportunity and really this platform, right? The podcast. This is absolutely awesome. But just having that page, that Llama-Leadership page, man, and that platform to give folks, what I mean, that platform to really speak their mind, right? And to give folks a different perspective, man, is really awesome, man. So I appreciate you, man. No doubt.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny. I'll tell you a secret. We were all considering at one point, and we always just kind of come up with ideas and thoughts, and we're like, are the articles needed anymore? I mean, we were doing the podcast thing now, but then really part of the reason why we're like, no, we got to keep these articles was your article that you wrote, and some of the, plenty of other great ones that came along. We're like, no, we got to keep these articles coming, because they're value added. Now we may switch up how we're going to deliver them, which I'm not going to share on here yet until we're still trying to work on
Sure,
that.
sure.
But we got
Yeah.
some good stuff in the works. But hey, man, so we always try to end these with a leadership rapid fire. You asked me a couple questions. I'm about to ask you a series of 4 questions. All right.
All right, brother. I'm in.
All right. First question. What is your favorite leadership trait?
Ooh, humility.
All right. Humility. Cool. So, all right. Question
I'd
number
say
2.
I say humility. Yeah.
Okay. Question number 2. What is your favorite quote?
Oh, easy. It's about loyalty. It's in Colin Powell's book, It Worked for Me, where he says loyalty is disagreeing strongly and executing faithfully.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, and that was in the awesome article that you wrote, and I love that one too. Sweet. All right. What is the number 1 book that you would recommend to an aspiring leader?
Number 1, I'm gonna say It Worked for Me. The Colin Powell book. Man, there's so many nuggets in there. And that's 1A. And if I had to go 1B, I'm gonna say The Alchemist. But you got to critically think to get the ones out of The
Yeah.
Alchemist. But I'd say It Worked for Me and The Alchemist. Yeah.
Yeah, The Alchemist is a great book, man. I've met so many people that found so much goodness in that. And then but it's funny, it's polarizing. Some people are like, I don't know why everybody likes that book, but it's like, you do
Oh
got to
yeah.
kind of get to another level with that book.
it's not for everybody.
Right. All right. Cool. So, and then we always end it with question number 4, which is kind of playing off of our motto at the Llama Lounge. And it's the deepest question we have. How do you find harmony between life, learning, and leadership?
That's a good one. Wow. I think it's all about where you're trying to be and what you're trying to be as a person, right? I'm constantly in a state of prioritizing, right? It's kind of like Maslow's hierarchy, right? My faith and my family, kind of going back to what I said, that those are always going to be first. And so when those things are in balance, everything else is easy, man. I prescribe to a model of it's just work. It's just work, right? Doesn't matter how hard it is. Doesn't matter how difficult. It's just work. We're going to do it. And so I've realized that, when my faith and my family are good, and I keep the mentality of it's just work, man, life's good, man. It's harmonious. I don't see this stuff as hard. It's just what I do, you know what I mean? And I enjoy it, right? So with that being said, man, it's about those two things and everything else falls in place for me.
Yeah. And when you said that, that just reminded me of this. Somebody said it recently and said, "Hey, I said it's simple. I didn't say it's easy." I mean, a lot of those things are like that,
Right.
Things where like, yeah, I always tell people one of the simplest pieces of advice I give is like, hey, be good at what you do and don't be a jerk. And you're probably going to go far in life. But man, how hard is that for people to do? Simple advice, hard to execute sometimes, but man,
Yep.
Abbie, thank you so much for taking the time, man. We're gonna have to have you on here again to talk about some more just some real stuff, and I really
Anytime,
appreciate
brother.
it. And like I said, I've been watching from a distance, and the growth that I've seen. I know we both grown a lot since the last time we worked together, and I'm just extremely proud of what I've seen you doing, and just proud to know you, bro.
Appreciate it, brother, man. Thanks for the opportunity, man. It's been a blessing to watch you from afar, man. So keep doing what you're doing, man. You're an inspiration for all of us.
Thank you. All right. And to our listeners, thank you for listening and spend some time with us at the Llama Lounge. As always, be safe, stay healthy, and llamas are out.
Thanks for listening to the show. We'd love for you to connect with us at www.llama-leadership.com and on Facebook at facebook.com/Llama-Leadership and also on Instagram at Llama Leaders. And a big thanks to Mike Whitmer for the music. To check out more of this stuff, go to soundcloud.com/Mike-Whitmer. Thanks again. See you on the next episode.